Hi guys, welcome to another Living in SATV video. David here. Today we are going to check the second episode of gender-based violence in South Africa to tell you guys that basically abuse in relationships, it's not normal and how you can fight it. And today we have an amazing guest in our show. Her name is Marta and she is the director behind Tears Foundation. So stay tuned because this video once again will blow your mind. Hi everyone, welcome to another Living in SATV video. David here. Today I'm very pleased to announce that we have on the second episode of gender-based violence in South Africa a very special guest. Her name is Marta Glennie and she is a director behind the Tears Foundation that takes care of women and children that went through abuse. Marta, how are you?
Hello, David, and hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here today. What a privilege, and I'm wearing my crown to celebrate that there's healing after abuse.
Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so the biography will be Miss Marta Glennie. Is the founder of Tears Foundation, a woman-led non-profit organization that provides victims of gender-based violence access to life-saving services. South Africa's gender-based violence rates are some of the highest in the world. The idea came to her as she was recovering from her life-threatening abuse at the hands of her husband. Marta uses her own experience as a driving force behind her passion to eliminate gender-based violence and has a vision of South Africa where adults and children are free from sexual violence. Marta also has a master's graduate in business leadership. Let's go to the first question. The first question is, please tell us about your organization.
We've been going for almost 10 years, and I started it on my dining room table. I started Tears because I'm a survivor of abuse, as you mentioned, and intimate partner violence is most often a life-threatening situation. So that means I physically fought for my life. And that experience marked me forever. But when I recovered, I realized that it was not a unique experience that happened in homes around our country and around the world. And when I went to the police station, they did not help me. They told me to come back on Monday, and it was a Friday. And I feared for my life. It's not a unique situation, but it is a sad situation that police don't help you. So when I became well, I decided, and I was saying to them at the police station, please, just tell me where I can go. I need help. I need it now. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. Not only did I feel scared, I felt ashamed. And I felt like I had nowhere to turn. And I needed to go to a place that would talk to me or sit with somebody who would say, you're going to be safe. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. But nobody did that. So instead, my fears grew and grew. So when I started to develop Tears, I asked myself the simple question, what would I have wanted when I was in the police station? What service did I need? And the service that I needed was very simple. Someone to tell me where to go for help, a trained professional. So that's what I developed, is a list of trained professionals across South Africa that will help you for free. I decided on a free service because for me, it's very important that every person in South Africa, whatever their race, religion, or color, is able to get free access at the tip of their fingers. That's why I called my service Help at Your Fingertips. You simply dial a number, and within a couple of seconds, using USSD prompts, the 3 nearest places to you that are geolocated will be on your phone. But once I'd started that service, I realized it wasn't actually enough. So we then entered into a collaborative agreement with an amazing organization called Namola. So you have now 2 prompts on our service. One is find your nearest counseling center. The next one is, do you need immediate help? And if you push that button, Within approximately 15 to 20 seconds, someone will call you back and say, are you in a life-threatening situation? How can we help you? So once I realized that a woman could be saved in her house, they will then send a security company or contact the police to come and help you. Then I realized we had to add other things to that service. So locating your nearest center and getting emergency help are sort of the beginning and the end of the problem. But in the process of healing, you need a lot of other things. Unfortunately, we have courts that are not victim friendly. So we help and advise people how to get protection orders. We help people find places of safety, because when you are afraid and poor, especially, but at all times, and you've got want to protect your children and you don't have any money, where do you go? So we do all sorts of extra services. Like we'll fetch somebody in an Uber that we pay for, or we'll and drop them at a shelter. There are conditions you have to follow to get into a shelter in South Africa, and you have to lay a police charge. So unfortunately, a lot of people aren't prepared to go the final step and lay a charge so they don't get into shelters. And that's a protection for the shelters, because what happens is the abusers make huge promises to the survivor that all she wants to hear, I love you and I'm sorry and I'll never do it again. And then they get into the shelters and cause havoc. So with the protection or with laying a charge, the police can be called to protect all the other people in the shelter. So you don't get into a shelter in South Africa if you haven't laid a charge. We also help with other services, encouraging them to go for child maintenance. We don't offer any of the services ourselves. We do accompany them to court on occasion to get the protection orders. We do refer them to lawyers, etc. Because I've tried to provide the service that I needed and wanted, and that is support and where to get help. Because actually, the difficult part about surviving abuse is nobody is going to do it for you. And that's something you really have to remember. We can give you the wherewithal, but in order to survive and grow into the next stage of your life, which can be absolutely amazing, you have to make the personal effort, make the appointments, make the phone calls, and do the footwork. You won't get well by expecting someone else to do it for you, because basically they won't. So survival is a matter of really getting out there and saying, I have a will to survive. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm glad to be alive.
Thank you very much for your inspirational words. Well, second question. Do you only assist women and children, or do men also come to you for support?
We primarily assist women and children because, as I said, I started it because of my personal traumatic experiences and realizing that help wasn't there. But we are basically an anti-rape movement. So anti-rape is irrespective of who it happens to, and most definitely we do get calls from men and we do help them. Sadly, in South Africa specifically, there are very few facilities that help men. We do work with some organizations, but I do feel that's an area that we have a gap in, and I've always been hoping that someone would do something like I have, but for men. It is much needed. The statistics that I have is that 1 in 3 women are raped and that 1 in 6 men get raped. And the problem is that men don't come forward. They are more ashamed than women. So unfortunately, rape is a thing that happens to a person, and the person who is raped, the victim, nearly always bears the guilt. It was my fault. I should have been at that club. I shouldn't have walked in that street alone. I shouldn't have got into that Uber. And actually, that is totally wrong. Rape is the rapist's fault.
Exactly. I do completely agree.
Third question. Why is abuse such a difficult matter to deal with?
Well, first of all, it's a very shameful thing for people to admit, and it shouldn't be. We should be ashamed of our society of casting aspersions against women and men that have been raped. Honestly, it's the rapist's fault. One of the motivating factors for me was that I realized we lacked education. We don't talk about rape. We don't talk about it. We'll say, oh, shame, you know, her husband's a bit tough. Instead of saying, he's dominant, he's abusive, he's whatever, we skirt around the issues. And when I came to realize that the majority of intimate partner violence, and in our country, 6 women a day are murdered by their intimate partner. It's the highest in the world. That's absolutely shocking. 6 women a day die with their intimate partner. And one started there to look at what is the cause of intimate partner violence. Many of the issues that were raised was that it is when the woman tried to terminate the circumstances of her relationship. In other words, she wanted to leave him, she wanted to move, she wanted to change her job, and it could be as little as she wanted to cut her hair or get a new dress. It's his will over your will. That's when the abuse happens. And in my case, it was when I said, I'm not paying your bills anymore. I'm not putting up with you having a girlfriend. And when I've spoken to other women, and the research that we've done has shown that actually that is the most vulnerable time for a woman when terminating a relationship. And so for me, I also wanted to get the message out there to people. Don't do it alone. Go with your mother, your best friend, your pastor, whoever. Don't do it alone because it could cost you your life. And I'm afraid that message is not broadcast.
Thank you very much. So why do you feel that South Africa has such an issue with gender-based violence? What will be the root of this?
It's a tremendous shame. And one must remember that it's across every single society in our country. It's not a black or a white problem. It is a South African problem. It can happen in a township, it can happen in a squatter camp, and it can happen in a luxurious area. It is not bound by any norms. So any race, any shape, any religion, any size, any color, it can happen. So when it's happening in such largeness, one must have a look. We are, number one, a country where life is very cheap. People are killed quickly in our country. People are killed at taxi ranks with bottles. People are killed in their houses. Life is cheap. We get hijacked. When we deal with a victim who's escaped from a hijacking, we don't say, oh my God, what a terrible crime. We say, thank goodness you weren't hurt and you're alive. So until we refocus our societal norms to be, it's a disgrace to be hijacked. Most countries don't have hijacking. The next reason I would tell you is that we are a patriarchal society. And even myself, I absolutely acknowledge that in my life, it's a patriarchal society, and it is more so in other cultures. What I mean by that is it's totally and absolutely the norm, for example, for every pastor to be a male. So we accept that he has the words of knowledge. And if you look at our government and our societies, everywhere males are the rulers. Mostly the MDs of companies are men. And I don't have a problem with any of that. But it should be equality. There should be an equal number of women. So men go off to parliament and decide about women's issues. So we have a problem with patriarchy because at the rural end, the men are the sort of little kings of their areas and tell people what to do. Then we also have the problem with lobola. Lobola is a place where you give the bride's parents cows in return for her joining your family. And it was a beautiful tradition before, but it's become an ownership thing. And a man will say to a woman, you have to have sex with me because I paid lobola for you. So we are basically a very, very complicated country with cheap life and complicated laws.
Thank you very much. What can South Africans do to support your organization?
During the lockdown, I had to make some changes because we were not operating a 24/7 service. And we were dealing with between 7,000 and 10,000 incoming calls a day. Because when people were locked up in their homes, their circumstances overwhelmed them. And by that I mean, you're sitting, you're locked up, you can't go out, and you start thinking about your life. What does life mean? And there's been a worldwide onset of depression with the lockdown. So this is not a unique circumstance to South Africa, but I'm sharing with you the cases that we dealt with. So this woman would be at home with or without her partner, because this is not partner related, and start thinking about her life. You know, why did I put up with that from my uncle? You know, my brother, my pastor raped me. And then they would suffer self-hatred, and they'd be phoning us and saying, I was raped as a child and I can't deal with it. And then some of the other calls were, you know, my husband is being abusive, he shouts at me all day. And these factors increased, and they increased in South Africa and worldwide, simply because the lives that we live are so busy. We have breakfast with our partner and may not see him or her till that night, and perhaps in some areas we didn't have commonality. And suddenly this person that you've been married to for X number of years, you're seeing day in and day out, and they get on your nerves or you get on their nerves. So intimate partner violence increased greatly because of that. So in answer to your question of what we can do about it individually, I think we need to understand what our actions mean to other people, because most of us live very selfish lives. And you wouldn't come home one day and say, everybody, we are vegans. You would be discussing it over a number of weeks, and as a family with maybe your older children, decide on that. And so what we have to do is use that same principle with rape and abuse. It needs to be a dinner table topic. We need to be talking about it. And in the same way, if we do giving of any kind, we need to give it to charities nearby you or to us. So at the lockdown, we had to increase our staff, and we had to get extra funding in to pay for their salaries, because you can now, we don't offer counseling, but we offer a service which we call containment, and we help that person through that bad moment till they can go into full-time counseling. So whilst I do need money for tears, I kind of see the situation as a more holistic request. What can you do? And the reason I gave that long explanation about lockdown and discussing things at the dinner table is that every person in their own area or school, university or workplace can help. They can speak out if they see someone being abused. They can suggest to their company to take up a donation for their local shelter. In other words, I'm saying become a citizen of South Africa and understand that together we can make it better. And we cannot do it alone as Tears. We work with other organizations. So we are not in competition. It's not this chocolate bar versus that chocolate bar. It's this amazing woman's life that we want to change.
What impact does growing up in an abusive home have on children who witnessed this abuse?
I think abuse has a lifelong effect on children. So I know that in my case, when I chose my marriage partners twice, I didn't mind that they shouted at me. They didn't hit me, but they screamed at me and told me I was stupid and whatever. And I'd lived in a family where that happened. So in my case, I've learned that disrespectful partners were part of relationships. So I think it has a lot of spin-offs that are not necessarily the ones that we can name: trauma, fear of men, fear of loud noises, being timid, all those kind of things. But it has a way of conditioning the children to accept the norms. So studies have found that boys who grow up in households where the father hits the mother, generally speaking, hit their wife. And so it becomes a learned behavior and it becomes the norm. For example, if the father sits down in front of the TV and says, "Bring me a beer," in a rude fashion, that's how the boy's going to act. So unfortunately, abusive households affect every single realm, every single part of your being, because it becomes a learned behavior and expected. So respect is, as I said a bit earlier, taught at the dinner table. Respect is taught about discussing things, being open, and of course, we've got all sorts of rules in South Africa now against corporal punishment, and that means you never hit your children, but it should mean you never hit your wife either. And so we just use corporal punishment, and I mean in terms of punching, very loosely in this country. So I'm saying it has a life-shattering effect, and as an adult, that child may have impulse reactions that are related to the abuse that they have to learn to deal with. You don't just leave home at 18 and you're fine. It is imprinted on your life forever. It's a life-changing growing up in an abusive household.
These children who are abused, when they become parents, do they think that it's normal to hit the wife, to hit the kids? Look, I know one thing at home is respect. You need to have respect for your kids, for your wife, and respect for yourself in order to educate the kids the best way. And having a stable household, it's important for the growth of your family, with values, with principles. My question is, these troubled adults, do they seek for help, or for them it's just normal?
It's a great question, because in my personal experience, they don't seek for help because they don't know any different. It's only when they end up in a situation where they react badly, say in a company, and they are told they can only keep their job if they go for anger management, or when their marriage is falling or their relationship is falling apart and they look for marriage counseling. Very, very few people actually on their own seek counseling. So we are essentially looking at a population of people who have been hurt as children, who need to have counseling but don't get counseling. So adulting is not that easy. And learning to be an adult on your own norms, in other words, I will never be like my parents, means relearning. But very few people say that. They just think it's the norm. So if his mum was hit by his dad, he will hit his wife. Chances, and hard as that is to absolutely imagine, it is what happens.
Because we have this toxic masculinity in our society that says that a man needs to be strong, aggressive, and all that. Because in the bigger scheme of things, men who are respected are men who are calm, men who know they have their self-confidence in place. They are gentle people. They are capable of motivating other people to grow and go forward. That's what a real man is about. Not this toxic masculinity that doesn't bring anything positive to society. You are a member of Shukumisa. Tell us about this organization.
Very proud of the organization. It's a national organization in South Africa, and it encompasses about, I think it's 80 organizations that help rape and abuse victims in various ways. It could be developing educational programs. It could be fighting for the legal rights, because we've got a lot of laws going through Parliament, drawing up objections and comments on the laws, etc. And so the organization basically represents every sphere of people who work in the civil society against rape and abuse. And so it's an organization whereby we have a code of ethics. It's an unformalized association, and it's so you join by wanting to join and not by paying a membership fee or being part of XYZ organization, but you join because you're committed to the ideals of having South Africa where we can actually be free and rape isn't staring us over our shoulder on a daily basis. We also believe that rapists should be, the police should be helping women who report, and men and children who report abuse or rape. So we hold the police accountable for services. And we also totally believe that collaboration is the only way that we can take South Africa forward to hopefully be a society in which gender-based violence does not put us as number one in the world for that.
So keeping up with confidentiality, share with us success stories.
Perhaps I could, during the lockdown, we had a very, very stringent lockdown, and travel was not allowed. The government departments were not issuing protection orders. Homes were not taking children or women. And we had a call from a very desperate young lady who'd been kicked out of her home. She was in her very early 20s. And her stepdad had kicked her out of her home, using as the excuse the fact that he didn't want to catch HIV from her during the lockdown. But she was really kicked out. Yes, she was HIV positive. She's pregnant, and the stepfather just didn't want her there. So there was this beautiful young pregnant lady with HIV who couldn't find a place to stay. And so we had the privilege, we grannies now, we had the privilege of finding her a place to stay, and she's got a beautiful baby, and we're very proud of that. But it took us almost a week of phoning around to find a place that would take her, but she had to go into the COVID isolation, etc. So we have some other wonderful stories like that, but I think the message at the bottom of every story of hope that we share is that we help people without questioning how they got into that position. So if you are pregnant and you've got HIV, we still love you. We don't have to find out where you got HIV. We make sure that you're getting your pills. If you need a safe place for you and your baby, we won't talk to you about the fact you should have taken more care and lecture. We say, come, we'll love you and your baby. And I think that's a lesson that I learn every day, that unconditional love and respect is not something we naturally have in this country. But we choose to do that every day. And it's a choice I urge every one of you to make. When you see a person in a difficult situation, there but for the grace of God is me. It could be me. And so that's what I think of. And actually that enables all of our team to renew themselves each day, because we do have sad stories where recently we were contacted by a person, and she was reporting on behalf of a friend who was getting raped by her stepdad. And her sister of 19 was also pregnant by the stepdad. And we were in the process of getting help for her. And the pain just got too much, so she committed suicide. And so I have the happy story where we found a home for the mum and her baby. And then the heartbreaking story where we couldn't help the girl anymore. But both ways, we did the best to love them in the circumstances that they were. And in fact, I feel quite emotional about it, because if only we took more time to love people and care for them, we'd be a better country and we'd have less rape victims.
We really need more people like you, Mona. Thank you. Thank you very much. Shouldn't we actually rethink um, the schooling system, the educational system in schools, and teach kids about this type of stuff? How bullying interferes with self-esteem, with personal growth, teaching the kids how to we teach in schools that we're not supposed to get lift from strangers, for example. Why don't we tell our kids about this? Why don't we tell our kids to, to protect, if they see someone being bullied in school, please, can we stop with this? Why can't we teach kids the principles of psychology in school? Like, for example, in Japan, before the kids actually start to even read and learn mathematics, they spend 40 years of their lives learning about respect. And that has a tremendous effect on the country's society and culture on the long run. So why can't we adapt to from other countries' educational systems, things like this? What will be your opinion about that?
David, you're 100% correct. And I'm pleased to tell you that there are a number of organizations training in the schools for bullying, for rape and abuse. We were at a school on Wednesday training, and we present the things in bulk bite-sized chunks. And this particular high school, we were teaching them about the age of consent. And what we taught them, they were shocked, was that 16 is the age of sexual consent. But if you still live at home with your parents and they are sending you to school, buying your food and dressing you, paying your school fees, you are under their disposition until you're 18. And these young girls were freaked out. They could not believe it because they'd been told all this time 16 is the age of consent. But only when you are emancipated at 18, when you leave home and you support yourself, do your parents not have jurisdiction over you. So I think it often comes down to teaching very bad. We specifically chose that topic. We only had an hour. And so I think if more funding, I hate to harp on funding, because we give the talks for nothing and many other organizations do the same, is that our school system is under-resourced and underfunded. And definitely the schools where you're talking about the Japanese system, is that where schools that have implemented things like meditation and relaxation in the schools have vastly improved. And so we could definitely improve all those things if organizations could get funding to do that. It's much needed. And I think it's a huge problem because many of our school children would have been up at 4:30 or 5 to get to school on time with 2 or 3 taxis. So we really live in an impoverished state of education. I'm using that word. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about impoverished in the opportunities that are available to these students to learn those extra skills. And then on top of it, they've got homework and rushing back. I mean, the average young school learner's life in South Africa, I don't think it gives them a minute to rest. So it's a much needed, I agree, but it needs to be funded.
Look, I'm just worried about this because I see how people have very unhealthy coping mechanisms, and it's scary. People resort to violence. People resort to drinking. People resort to all type of bad behaviors that don't help their situation and the situation of their family, their kids, people around them. And it's such a big matter, which is we need to develop good helping coping mechanisms. One thing that I always do with stress is always, like you mentioned, meditation. If it's stay still or just listen to a guided meditation, it's important to rewire your brain to calm yourself down. And finally, what are the plans for the future of Tears? Will you, for example, start recording these sessions on schools, for example?
That's something that we have been talking over for the number of years. Our first next step would be to find a way to make our number known to more people. So we're looking for avenues for putting out our free helpline number, because people don't get the help they need because, like me, they don't know where to go. So there are a few organizations like ours who offer 24/7 services. And I think every service should be published in every newspaper. They should be asked to publish all the services, because the most important thing if you've been raped or abused is to get counseling and help. And if you don't know where to go, or you're afraid to go somewhere because they might charge you, and because if you're poor and you have no money, what can you do? Or you might not want to go to a place which is common in the community. I don't want to go there because Auntie so-and-so works there and she's friends with Auntie so-and-so and they'll all know my problems. So you mentioned confidentiality earlier, and one of the most important things one has to do is be totally confidential and not talk about your cases. And sadly, not everybody does that. So where would we go in the new year or in the coming year? We're hoping to increase our services, create an by offering a better service for the people, expand it. We want to go to court with people when they go to court support, because they get scared. So if you can just send some of your volunteers to sit with them on that day, which we have done on occasion, but at the moment, because we have few staff, it means taking someone out of the office. So imagine you've never been to court in your whole life, and now you're going to go and sit and look across your abuser. It's terrifying. So court support is one of the areas where we definitely want to go. Support with getting protection orders. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the system really is against, it's not favoring the victim. They are protection orders extremely difficult. And how a protection order works is it's granted by the judge or the magistrate, sorry, and it has to be served on the person who you've got the protection order against, and it has to be served by the police. And often this is not served. So we want to offer more services in that area. We want to offer people the help to be able to write the protection order, because we recently had a protection order where we were helped in court and the protection order was thrown out. And when we went for advice afterwards, they said, because of this following wording, it was thrown out. And I just wondered how many other hundreds of women had lost their protection order because of incorrect wording. So we want to help them with that. We also want to help people with things like a parenting plan, because if you split up from your partner, irrespective of if you're married or common law or whatever, you want to be able to know that he's going to see the kids on a Monday and you're going to get maintenance of X. So parenting plans are not always in place. And there are many other forms. So what I'm really saying is that we want to encompass more of the support services that are needed by survivors for them to go back and live a proper life. I always think of myself how blessed and lucky and amazingly I have the most wonderful life. Can you imagine getting up every single day of your life, doing something you love doing, having the blessing from God of being able to help people turn their lives around? I just cannot believe that I'm that lucky, that I have such an amazing, wonderful life. And I know that I can say to people who've been abused, step up there, take the doors that are open, get better, and you can also have an amazing life.
Thank you very much for your words, Mara. Thank you. You are such an ocean of wisdom and experience. And for any person who is actually watching this podcast, please report speak with Tia, speak with any organization about if you're going through a very hard situation. It's important for you to protect yourself, to protect your children. If something is bad happening to you, act. Don't wait for disasters to come, because it's like I said, it's a time bomb. So another thing is, how can people actually follow your organization's work?
Well, you can follow us on Facebook. It's Tears SA. You can also follow www.tears.co.za. And if you need help, you can mail me Mara, M-A-R-A, at tears, tears.co.za. I handle all the incoming mails. I make sure that every case is dealt with simply because I'm not doing this for any other reason than I care. And it's a privilege for me to be able to make a difference in people's life. And I thank God for that opportunity.
Mara, thank you very much for your work. You have been doing an amazing work. God bless you for what you have been doing, not only for yourself, but also for the people in South Africa. And probably you save already tons of lives. And thank you very much for your work. It's very inspirational. Like you said, living with a purpose. And like I say, for any organization out there, please divulge your work, what you are doing. Create a YouTube channel to reach more people. Don't be afraid to say what you're doing, because every time, even if your video or your social media doesn't go to a lot of people, you will touch people's hearts. You will change people's lives with your message. So don't be afraid to do the right thing. That's what I'm always saying. Do the right thing. That's it. Nothing else. Mara, do you want to add anything else?
Yes, I agree with you. I believe in the starfish principle. So for those of you who don't know the starfish principle, it's a little girl walking down this beach with her granddad, and the starfish have been washed up on the beach, hundreds of them, and she bends down and picks up a starfish and throws it back into the ocean. And her granddad says, "Look how many there are. What can you do?" She said, "But I've helped that one." And so that's what I believe in. I've helped that one. So every day you can help that one.
Thank you very much for your inspirational words. Mara, again, thanks again. God bless you. I hope many more people will be inspired by Mara's words. Anyway, I will leave all the information down below. Contact, be informed, learn more to get out of your situation if you have to, and do always the right thing, and build up always self-esteem and love yourself. That's the message that I also want to give out. Mara, thank you once again for the opportunity also to have you in the show. And we'll see you in the next LivinginSAtv podcast. Okay, so this was another amazing podcast, guys. Thank you very much for staying until the end. Don't forget to share, subscribe, destroy that like button, and make sure you stay tuned for the next LivinginSAtv podcast.